All right, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about logo design with our logo design expert, Maria, and all things logo and how important logo is. And so, yeah, stay tuned. Have you found yourself daydreaming about an idea or business? Are you interested in entrepreneurship? Do you have what it takes? I'm Rick Holtz, husband to my childhood sweetheart, father to 11, homeschool dad, owner of Holtz Leather, Heritage Wedding, Holtz Headwear, and our newest startup, Coco and Loco. In addition, we manufacture our own line of fine leather goods, candles, pottery, millworks, and have our own retail store. We are experts in e-commerce, marketing, and graphic design. We employ over 60 people. Did I mention we're completely self-taught? Follow along and let our family of entrepreneurs show you how to think outside the box. It's time to create and produce instead of consume. All right, welcome Maria. Maria is our logo designer here at Holtz Leather. She is an expert in graphic design and branding. Maria, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yes, and of course, as always, Avery is also included in this conversation, so he's going to be putting his points on some of the things that we're discussing. Today, we're going to be talking about logo design, the importance of logo design. For me, I can get pretty sold out pretty quickly on logo. In fact, I will put the cart ahead of the horse when I see a really cool logo. Sometimes I'll develop a whole brand or a whole brand idea just from looking at a logo or an image. It can be one of those things where do you get the joy when you're creating an art piece that there's almost more pleasure from setting up the logo and the art and the graphic design and the layout of your website than there is from the actual, it's like the launch, and then you kind of just sit there and it's like, oh, I hope we sell something now.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's often different pieces of art that I see or different inspiration I get, and then I want to incorporate it into design. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, what product am I going to do for this logo or for this design? But yeah, I agree.
I think I'm really bad with that, specifically at Holtz, because I'll see things that I like and I'm like, oh, I love that logo or that design, and I want to force it into our brand, and often it doesn't fit in our brand, and I get reminded often, hey Rick, that doesn't really fit our branding.
That's my job.
So yeah, it is your job, the naysayer to me. Anyway, so Maria, tell us a little bit about logo design. What makes a good logo?
So actually, first, could I tell you what makes a bad logo?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like that's really important. You start out with something and you want to improve it. So if I'm driving along and I'm looking at different logos that different companies have, I feel like the first two things that stand out to me that impact the logo negatively in my mind are the typography, so the choice of typeface, and then also just legibility. I feel like there's so many logos out there that you cannot tell what they're trying to sell, and you cannot read some of the words in the logos or the symbol that they have. It's just too small or too large. But yeah, I think those are the two biggest things that stand out to me is what logos are missing. They're missing the right typeface, the right font, and just the ability for somebody to walk by and immediately be able to say, okay, I know what that logo says. Not that you want your logo to say everything about you. You want to leave a little bit of mystery, but if you can't even read the logo, you have a problem there.
So how do y'all think that affects the success or failure of a product?
Well, first off, if you want to sell products, you want your customer to quickly understand what you're selling. And that's actually one of the important things of what makes a logo good, having a message in your logo. So I always like to think of FedEx's logo. The little secret arrow in FedEx, that's one of my favorite logos because it's so subtle, but it's there, and it's a hidden message for you to discover that we're getting your packages in the right direction and things like that, yeah.
It's kind of like the world of first impressions for me. When I see a logo, you're starting to judge that company. Kind of like what you were saying, if you see a person, you're judging that person by what they're wearing, the clothes that they're wearing. I mean, clothes send a specific message. Are they a cowboy? Do they have their cowboy boots on? You already kind of have this visual image of this person. Or if they're wearing skinny jeans, you kind of have a specific mindset of what they are. And I think a logo is very much the same way. When you talk about typography and how typography can really destroy a logo, and it really makes you feel like they didn't take time and energy into their logo, why is anything else that they sell going to be good? Also, I find myself when I go into stores, specific on the wine label side of things, like when I'm buying a bottle of wine. I love wine, but I am not an enthusiast of wine in the sense that I can taste. My taste buds are not that refined. But so when I go to buy wine, I'm looking at labels, and I love labels, beautiful wine labels. How often do you find yourself gravitating towards a product or something like that just based on the design of the label itself? Logos have a way. I mean, it's art, so it's stirring emotion. I get pretty emotional over like our logo. Like our logo to us it's very. It's a castle, and it's very reflective of some very difficult times that our family went through. We've incorporated a lot of our personal story and tragedy into the logo, and our logo story is very close to our hearts, so we don't really tell it a lot. We don't tell people what our logo means. There are a few people who come into our retail store and they're like, "Hey, what's the significance of the castle?" And I start. And if they ask, then I'll dissect and give them a little more detail of the logo and why we developed the logo the way it is. And people are they're so moved. And inside the logo, for us, it was a development after we lost everything and went through some really difficult times. And it was reflective of a dream I had at that time. But anyways, it was also kind of a reset in our life. We were at a reset phase, and I wanted to always remember, no matter what, coming out of that, for it to be a memory, or for us to recount where we had come from. And so inside our logo, I put in Hebrew, so it's not just out there for everybody to see, but I put a Hebrew inscription inside of our logo that just says the Lord's Vineyard. And it's just a reminder for our family that everything we do for the Lord. That everything we do in our business, it's not ours. We don't own it. We're caretakers. We're all going to die one day, and we're going to leave something behind. And for us, our logo is very much a reminder of our company and our business. So logos are also extensions of who you are. So when you go through the process of designing and creating your logo, you want it to have an element of who you are, who your family is, tied into it, or your style, your flair. But you got to be careful, I think, within that, of not losing control. And so tell me what you think the best way. So if I'm new to the business field and I'm wanting to start a business, and this is my first step at ever creating a logo, do you have any recommendations for somebody who's doing this for the first time? Is it something somebody should take out on their own and try to do on their own, or should they go to one of those websites where you pay $250 and you work with a designer and they kind of set you up and walk you through the process?
Well, I think it is definitely worth it to, if you don't have any skills of your own in design, to hire someone or do research. I mean, you can teach yourself a lot of things nowadays on YouTube or, the internet. But I think a logo is such an important part, like you were saying, to your story, to your message behind your business, that you really need to invest time and money to make sure that your logo is a good representation of your business, that it has elements that you want it to show the people that are going to be purchasing products from you, and also just to show what your brand is. Is it a luxury brand? Is it a sports brand? What generation are you marketing to? All of those elements can and should be included in a logo, I believe. So I think those are things that an experienced designer would be able to help you incorporate. So I do agree that.
So if I have, what would your recommendation? I think designers typically like if I'm coming to you and I'm hiring you, and I have kind of styles that I like, what would you tell me as a customer if I'm coming to you? Or what should, if I'm wanting to design a logo, working towards inspiration, would inspiration be helpful if I came to you and I had an inspiration board?
Oh yeah, of course. I think the first thing I like to ask whenever I'm designing a logo is questions about the business, like what inspires you, what drives you, what are you marketing, obviously, and then get to know the person a little bit more, the people in the company. And yeah, an inspiration board would be fantastic, because I have my own ideas of what a logo for your business should look like. But since it's your logo, if you have that inspiration, that can help if I can combine those two ideas together and then present to you something that's truly unique, but also truly special.
So
to
what
your
should I be
company.
looking for when I'm trying to go find inspiration for my logo? Am I looking at typography? Am I looking at layout? Am I looking at symmetry? I mean, what specifically, or maybe all of those things?
I think if you've got a designer that you're working with, I wouldn't actually look into that. I would look at what your company represents to you. So rather than trying to like look for things that they would be looking for to do the job, you're looking for things like, for Holtz, family, tradition, honor, all those things, talking about your story and all these things, where you want to go, where you have been. I mean, there are times I think it would be good if, the designer sat down with you and like went over some of those things, but giving them some of the raw kind of ideas and the brand, what it is like to you guys, I think that probably would help, an experienced designer the most in being able to come up with something, at least for the first steps.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree.
All right, so let's swing back around and talk about the Holtz logo. Like, what are your thoughts about the structure and the look of that logo?
Well, the first thing I think you notice is, of course, the castle and then the word Holtz. And those are two of the big important things. The castle being part of the reason that y'all started this business, and then y'all's last name, Holtz. And that's the reason that those two things are the main things that pop out and attract your attention, is part of what we call hierarchy. So you want the most important part of your business, of your logo, to be the largest part, usually centered in your logo. And then the other elements to just complement it, be smaller size, like the Leather Co., the Made in America, also an important part, but not as important as Holtz. And then, of course, the trademark and stuff like that. And also the Hebrew that you were talking about earlier, put into the castle. That's kind of like your little secret message in there, which I think is very cool. But yeah, that is, I think, a really important part of what makes a logo good. Having good hierarchy, the main things being the larger part, and then the smaller things complementing it around the side.
So do you find yourself like going around town looking at logos and being like, ugh?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Do you do the same thing, Avery?
Oh yeah.
I feel like once you know what's right, the wrong things stand out to you so much.
There's
Yeah,
this mini mall out in Madison, and on the little sign that has, all the little rectangles of their, the business, their logos and, the name of it, there are two right next to each other, both in papyrus.
Oh.
Like two completely separate businesses. I can't remember what it was for, but like they were both in papyrus. I'm like, jeez.
That's the worst impression ever.
Oh, it was so bad. It's one thing to see one, but to see two completely separate businesses using the exact same overused font right next to each other. Oh.
That's very
Anyways,
painful.
that's something that I'm sure Maria and I would bug us more than most people, obviously, because it still hasn't changed.
What about conflicting colors? Like, how many colors should you use in a logo?
I think 2 is good. I mean, all logos are going to be in a black and white format at some point. And so it's important that when it changes to black and white, that it's still recognizable, it's still legible. So I think when you're creating a logo, you should always start in black and white. But I think adding color can be a nice element, because color has emotion attached to it and meaning attached to it. But yeah, I think more than 3, it can be of a lot, honestly.
So what about like sizing of a logo? Like I've noticed that when we're designing websites, and we've designed some different or used different templates and styles for designing websites, that you have your little logo section where you put your logo. And I've noticed that there's a real trend to go like narrower, thinner line logos, where our logo's a little taller, so it becomes difficult in situations. So should you have different options for your logo, different use styles, I guess you would say, or how would you say it?
I would say variations. Yeah, I think that's really another important part of having a good logo, having the variations, and making it scalable too, because your logo is going to be large in some spaces, it's going to be small in some spaces. Like you said before, it's going to have to be a long and narrow logo in some different projects that you work on, and then other projects, it's nice to have a taller logo or a more square logo. I would say probably the squarer your logo is, the better it will fit into different things.
Here, just wait a sec.
I would say the more close your logo is to a square, the better it's going to fit into different projects that you're going to be working on.
Very cool. Very cool.
I think also there's different things like the little favicon, the little icon that, it's probably like a total of like 50 pixels. But the thing that goes in your browser up there, that's something that you'd usually want like a very small version of a logo, and that could just be for like Holtz, it could just be the castle or an H. Like for the beard oil thing, it's black coat, but then for that Favicon, I just have the C with the little drip coming down. So something that, because there's always...
So explain what a Favicon is for people who don't know what a Favicon is.
So like on your browser, like on a, usually just on your desktop, you won't see it on mobile, but up on the actual tab right next to the name of the site that you're on, it'll show a little icon. And if you're on Amazon, it'll be the little A or the little smiley face, which I can't remember what it is now, but like, you know, if it's Walmart, it's the little star thing. It's just something that can go on there to, you know, if we're not on the tab, or if you've got a lot of tabs open and the name is being hidden, you can see the little icon. It's just something, it's not, usually you don't even need it. I mean, bigger companies, all bigger companies will have it, but it's just something to think about because that is very, very limited space and limited pixels, so you can't do much with it. But that would be an example of something where you really need to simplify it down.
Yeah, and that's something else to remember. Like when you're getting your logo design from a designer, the importance of getting it in the correct format for what you're using it for. So, and I learned this the hard way back when I was kind of just starting in business as younger, and I'd go to, you know, I'd want to go somewhere and get business cards made, or I'd want to go somewhere and get something printed with my logo on it, and they'd ask me for a, what's the format that most people ask for? It has to be in a vector. Vector. It has to be in a vector format. I was like, what's a vector format? I'm like, I got a JPEG. Isn't that good enough? And it's like, and then the understanding of that JPEG is not the same as a vector. You want to explain a little bit of the difference between JPEG, vector, or just an image file versus a vector format where...
So an image file is going to be more compressed, where a vector file, you can separate the elements and the different pieces. And I think that's important if you need to change a logo or in printing. I've not done a lot of printing myself, so I'm not sure 100% what they need on their side, but that's what I'm guessing.
Another thing is raster images, or, you know, like a JPEG is something that's based in pixels, whereas vector is based on lines and points. So if it is like, let's say, sorry, we got a lot of commotion going on inside. A vector would be something that, you know, if you've got a circle or, you know, some shape, you could size that to whatever, and it's not based on any fixed dimension, which does, like what Maria said, makes it a lot more editable, usually in like in Illustrator file or something like
Illustrator, EPS.
Yeah, so make
PDF.
sure when you have your logo design, you get it in a vector format, because you can take it from a vector and you can convert it to any type of JPEG, a bitmap, or whatever it is that you need for your art project or whatever your print company will need. You want to just make sure you have that vector format.
And if your designer doesn't know what that is, you picked the wrong designer.
Yeah, if you have a good designer, they will send you
like, what's a vector?
folder with all the appropriate files in it.
Yeah, that's good to know. Good to know. All right, so what are your thoughts on like a creative market? Like I love going to creative market personally because they have these companies that, or people that design all these design packs, and so you can go in there, and I feel like a lot of times you can get away from reinventing the wheel, and mainly I use it a lot for like email creation, that type of thing, where I'm not going to go and hand draw an arrow or whatever, but they also have logo packs inside of there that are, some of them are fairly, in my untrained graphic design I'm like, ooh, that looks great. It's like, in fact, I designed one of our products, our whiskey barrel smoking blocks. Our smoking blocks, I found this really cool design on Creative Market, and we took it and made it our own. We tweaked a few of the lines from the vector art, and we put it on our bag, and these smoking blocks have sold, and I think really they're wood chunks, but they sell so well because the bag is beautiful, and it's a beautiful presentation of art on the bag that has the smoking blocks inside. And for me, I am a sucker for beautiful artwork on products. So what are y'all's thoughts on using places like Creative Market?
I think Creative Market is a great tool, like you said, for speeding up the design process, because when you're in a business, time is money. And so being able to get graphics that are already created.
Don't let me forget, but let's come back to that time as money aspect and the 80-20 rule. So keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so to be able to put those already designed graphics into your projects can definitely speed things up. For logo creation, I am not a fan of using Creative Market logos. Unless you are a really, really small startup business, then obviously you don't have a lot of funds or time to invest in your logo creation. But later on, once you become a small business and a small company, I think it is worthwhile to invest in a designer who can make a logo that's truly yours, not one that anybody else can purchase on the internet.
I totally agree with that. And I think Maria brings out a great point there about if you don't have the capital, like you're starting on a shoestring, then yes, do what you can, but always keep logo evolution in the back of your mind. It's kind of fun if you get out there and you do like logo evolution, you do a Google search of like logo evolution of IBM. IBM is a very old company, but they have a string of these old logos, and some of them they're really cool vintage style logos, but you can see the progression of their logos and how they've changed over time. So it can very much be a part of your story, and I think you can pull those old logos out sometimes. It's kind of like in sports when they go back to the vintage jerseys or the vintage helmets. They bring out like the old Broncos helmet where the Broncos coming out of the D, and it's just they're kind of cool throwback elements, and that can be that for your business down the road once you start getting success, and then people are really become interested in your brand, and they're like, oh, I never knew, and then you can produce shirts out of it and all that cool stuff. And
I think the creative market stuff, I like it more for stuff that won't be lasting as long, whether that's like a Facebook post or ads or something. But I think stuff that's going to stick around your business for longer, like a logo or like a website, I think that's a little bit better. It's a little bit more appropriate. Again, assuming you're not on a shoestring budget, just starting out, to make it a little bit more purposeful rather than find something that you want. I mean, it would just be like, for your logo, it's like you can't get the H or the castle, but you can find on this catalog which one you want. It's like, well, I want it to be mine. But for like ads and things like we're talking about, just to be able to get stuff out, to produce content, which is kind of the name of the game right now, having some of those templates available, it's game changing.
Yeah, and that goes back to kind of what I wanted to swing back around is that 80-20 rule. And I think we struggled with this a little early on, is that I was very picky with the way that our art looked. In our early on art teams, we would spend an enormous amount of time designing products and or designing artwork that would go into an email. And before long, we realized that we were really losing productivity. And when you're losing productivity, you can really quickly be paying way too much for what you're trying to produce. So we've kind of have adopted this 80-20 rule that if you're 80% there, just go with it, because the time it takes to get to 80%, if you have a really good designer, it doesn't take much time. But to get to 90 to 100%, or not even up in the upper 90%, like, oh man, yeah, that's the gold. I mean, that's just the bomb. You're going to invest an enormous amount of energy and effort and time.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you could nitpick a project forever, but once you get to that 80%, you're really there. Mm-hmm. You've got your message across in that.
Right.
And it usually helps. I mean, I know that designers or creatives in general want, their work to look great, because that's a reflection of them, whether or not, anyone else thinks that or they think it, but it kind of is. But that's something that I think when you're in industry for a little longer and you see where it's going or how the payroll is being dispersed or, just basically the bottom line, it's easier to see, okay, I understand now why they're wanting me to get this out. And I feel like, for me at least, understanding that helps, I don't know, just to understand the business in general and not take it personal. It's like, oh, it's fine enough, just put it up. It's like, well, it's not done. It's not, it's like, hey, this isn't your art project in college. This is business. We're getting this out because we need these ads up. But any longer, and then we're eating into the cost that it takes to, to make this and stuff. And basically the bottom line becomes smaller because of how much longer we're taking. And so it's a difference in what you learn in college, which is just, more of the pure form of art versus e-commerce or advertising in general, which is, money and, getting sales is the name of the game. If it can sell, that's what's valuable about it, not what you think or the artistic,
Sure. So what are your opinions on getting a second opinion on your logo? Like, because this is one of those things that I feel like you can get into that nitpick world, or you can get advice from somebody who doesn't really know. Like in your logo design, is it just you just only want your opinion or what you like, or like you were doing your beard oil labels? Did you get secondary opinions, or did you pretty much just command the whole project from? Obviously, you have a little more graphic design experience than probably most.
I would say mine was a little bit unique in that it was never meant to be like a business, like a full-time business. It was meant to be a passion project. So I just wanted to make sure I liked it. But I had a designer who was fully competent, working on it. So it was both of us kind of going back and forth. But I think, and I'm also of the mind that with the logo, even if it's a bad logo, if you've got a great business, that's fine, because I'm going to look at your bad logo, but I'm going to remember all of the good things about it. It's just a reminder for me. However, getting new business, or if, someone goes on Yelp to look for a cool restaurant and your logo looks like, like
Trash.
garbage, that's not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
But I think that, that's why I say it's kind of not even secondary or tertiary. It's almost towards the end, as long as your business is doing well. So for me, it's kind of like, it's how you look. It's like, I love this person, I don't like this person. It's not because they're good looking and they're bad looking. It's because of who they are. So when I see them, doesn't matter how they look. Like, I remember how they made me feel. And so that's kind of what you're going for. But at the same time, there's other aspects, and not just the positioning in your customer's mind that should determine a logo.
Well, like you said, though, if you are looking at a company for the first time, if it's a new company or you just haven't experienced it before, then the logo is really important, because it is the first impression. Kind of going back to the wine example, if you're walking along and you don't have a specific wine in mind, then you look at the labels.
Right.
Because that's the next
That's a good
thing
point.
we look at. We're like, okay, what catches my eye? And you want a logo that catches your eye.
I think that about WD-40. Who would ever just of their own accord buy WD-40? I mean, who even came up with that name? That's horrible. I mean, I think the story behind it is it stands for water displacement in their 40th try to make it work. So they called it WD-40. What if it was WD-38? I mean, would it have the same ring? Would it have the same effect? I don't know.
I think that's a good example of something that the product works. Everyone knows what it, like Kleenex. That's a brand of tissue paper. You say, can you pass the Kleenex? It doesn't even have to be Kleenex. That's just what you pass. But WD-40, they've done such a good job, and they're so consistent, and it's withstood the test of time that, like that. And that's what I meant by the logo doesn't matter as much once you're established, because it's like, I don't care what the name is. I don't need it to be beautiful or, really ring. I know what that product is, and I know what they stand for, and I know what I'm getting when I get that product. But I do, at the same time, acknowledge that, what Maria's saying is like, yeah, if you're going through a shelf of different products and no one's heard of any of these brands before, like, they're going to go with the one that sounds good. And I think wine is a great example of that. It's like, no one's tasted all of the wines here, and if they have, that's a different problem, So, but for the most part, it's like you're looking for something that not only looks good, but at least kind of emanates trust. Like, you think that if you get this, like, they look established enough where I don't think they're going to scam you. This isn't going to be some super subpar product. This looks, to me, this bottle makes it look like their whole company knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and so going back to logo evolution, because that kind of made me think about it, is not giving your customers whiplash when you change your logo. Don't change your logo too often. I mean, because then it's like, I did this the other day. I bookmarked a website that I was interested in, and I had a visual in my mind of what it looked like, and I went back 6 months later, and it had a whole different look, different logo, but it was the same company. I was like, whoa, and I had a whole different feel about it. Really interesting.
Subway, MasterCard, those are two companies that have, MasterCard a few years ago, but Subway recently, they changed their logo, but it really didn't change that much. And if anything, they just kind of made their colors a little bolder. But that's something where it's like, yeah, it creates a little bit of buzz, and usually there's a lot of other reasons why they would change it. No corporate company is changing it for the sake of changing it. But that's something where it's like, if we were to really change this, it would be taking a few steps back because of, that recognition isn't there anymore. And that's why they have to keep it, in that same ballpark to make sure that they don't lose all the progress their company's made with having this recognizable brand.
Yeah, so be careful there. Be very cautious about if you're starting on a shoestring and you're designing a logo, be careful not to just keep changing it and flip-flopping it round and round, because I think you'll end up driving and losing brand traction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So closing up this episode, I think we're kind of getting to the end of our time here. As you start developing your business or your idea, I think it's vital that you have a logo that really sends the right message to your customer. It has the right coloring that matches what you're selling, and there's complete studies on all of these things: the color of the logo, the stylistic of the logo, the font style that you use. There are some font style no-nos. I think
Papyrus.
Everybody hates papyrus. Don't ever use papyrus. If your logo has papyrus, let's talk about evolution of logos, because your logo needs to evolve. You need to move on past papyrus. I think we all feel the same way there. Overused font style.
We're looking at you, Avatar.
Anyway, so take time, be thoughtful. I think it's one of the most critical aspects of your business is the design and the branding of your company, especially if you're going to be e-commerce or web-based, because that's what people see. That's what they're using to judge and to base your business around. And some other things we can talk through later is like the usability of a website and the flow of a website, and we might do a future podcast on discussing some of those things. But that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon. Do it. All right. So if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to like us, leave comments if you have questions, that type of thing, and we look forward to our next episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Visit us at holtzleather.com if you need a gift for that special someone.